Target Iraq. This is a special edition of NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
The United States and Great Britain today gave up the idea of winning a second UN resolution authorizing war against Iraq. So tonight, President Bush will go on national television where he will deliver a final ultimatum to Saddam Hussein. Monday, March 17th, the battle lines were drawn.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict, commenced at a time of our choosing. Fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign. More than 35 countries are giving crucial support, from the use of naval and air bases to help with intelligence and logistics to the deployment of combat units. Every nation in this coalition has chosen to bear the duty and share the honor of serving in our common defense. To all the men and women of the United States Armed Forces now in the Middle East, the peace of a troubled world and the hopes of an oppressed people now depend on you. That trust is well placed. The enemies you confront will come to know your skill and bravery. The people you liberate will witness the honorable and decent spirit of the American military. In this conflict, America faces an enemy who has no regard for conventions of war or rules of morality. Saddam Hussein has placed Iraqi troops and equipment in civilian areas, attempting to use innocent men, women, and children as shields for his own military, a final atrocity against his people. I want Americans and all the world to know that coalition forces will make every effort to spare innocent civilians from harm. A campaign on the harsh terrain of a nation as large as California could be longer and more difficult than some predict. And helping Iraqis achieve a united, stable, and free country will require our sustained commitment. We come to Iraq with respect for its citizens, for their great civilization, and for the religious faiths they practice. We have no ambition in Iraq except to remove a threat and restore control of that country to its own people. I know that the families of our military are praying that all those who serve will return safely and soon. Millions of Americans are praying with you for the safety of your loved ones and for the protection of the innocent. For your sacrifice, you have the gratitude and respect of the American people. And you can know that our forces will be coming home as soon as their work is done. Our nation enters this conflict reluctantly, yet our purpose is sure. The people of the United States and our friends and allies will not live at the mercy of an outlaw regime that threatens the peace with weapons of mass murder. We will meet that threat now with our Army, Air Force, Navy, Coast Guard, and Marines, so that we do not have to meet it later with armies of firefighters and police and doctors on the streets of our cities. Now that conflict has come, the only way to limit its duration is to apply decisive force. And I assure you, this will not be a campaign of half measures, and we will accept no outcome but victory. My fellow citizens, the dangers to our country and the world will be overcome. We will pass through this time of peril and carry on the work of peace. We will defend our freedom. We will bring freedom to us, and we will prevail. May God bless our country and all who defend her.
19th of March, 2003. That was 2,300 days ago. Put that in perspective. The Second World War lasted approximately 1,350 days for the United States. The Civil War, 1861 to 1865, 1,450 days. Vietnam is the only war that has lasted longer than the war in Iraq. 2,300 days. The tragedy is, as we are going to see moving forward in these lectures, it wasn't supposed to turn out like this. It was not supposed to turn out like this at all. But in those early heady days of Operation Iraqi Freedom, the possibility that in 2009 we would still be struggling to put this country back together again would have seemed ridiculously pessimistic, alarmist. 21 days was all it took to go from the beginning to the end of major combat operations. But as we know, that was only the beginning. The beginning of what was going to be a war unlike any the United States had fought. There are echoes of Vietnam, but the brutality, the extensive use of suicide bombers, makes the violence in Vietnam in some ways seem tame by comparison. But again, in those early days, no one could have predicted. Rather, those are the days of shock and awe, when the power of the United States military, its technological superiority, was put on display for the entire world to see, and most importantly for Americans to watch in their living rooms at home. Let's go to the tape.
Good evening. Almost 48 hours into the battle, the war advances with startling speed tonight. This is the scene in Baghdad now, hours before daybreak on Saturday morning in that part of the world, hours after a dramatic attack in which the Pentagon has now called it unprecedented in its precision. Explosions, fireballs, mushroom clouds, a fearsome display of American military might. On Friday, March 21st, air raid sirens split the night in Baghdad. This was shock and awe.
We felt the vibration of that one almost knocked me off my feet in the hotel room here. That was a major building in the presidential palace opposite three major buildings. Four, Tom, hit a mile away from us. You'll see the pictures now. There's considerable smoke. There were four buildings, two of them prized possessions of President Saddam Hussein. Again, more extreme. That area. Again, the blast hitting us in the room here. We have our camera tied down. We could be something like this. Seems like cruise missiles probably, Tom, because there's no sounds of aircraft. The sky now black with smoke in front of us. Just across the Tigris River here, violent explosions. More. The sky lit up. Blowing apart the prized presidential compound of Saddam Hussein. Many of his major administrative buildings going up in smoke and fire, Tom. Again, another. Just disintegrating. Bigger than the Gulf War, Tom, the first Gulf War, much bigger, these explosions. This is shock and awe, Tom, for the population of Baghdad. Shock and awe, indeed.
From his Baghdad hotel room, veteran war correspondent Peter Arnett had a frightening view of the punishing bombardment.
The main palace building gone up totally in smoke. Just all gone away, Tom. Just blown apart. We had a ringside view of right in front of us, these major buildings. Secondary explosions, more coming in. More, maybe there's secondary explosions.